They say love blinds you. I used to laugh when people said that. Until I realized I was the one walking through life with my eyes closed, smiling, believing everything was perfect, while cracks were quietly forming beneath my feet. My name is Lina Carter, and once upon a time, I thought I had it all. A warm home, a loving husband, a future we were building together. Ethan and I had been married for 3 years. He was everything a woman could want, charming, ambitious, polished. The kind of man who made you feel like the world revolved around you, at least in the beginning. When I met him, I was an up-and-coming marketing strategist with big dreams. But after marriage, I traded my career for his comfort. Late-night projects became late-night dinners. Presentations became grocery lists. My dreams quietly became his. I wasn't forced to give them up. I did it willingly, because I loved him, because I thought we were a team. Every time he'd smile and say, "I couldn't do this without you, Lina," my heart swelled with pride. I believed it. I believed us. One morning, as sunlight poured through our apartment windows, I handed him a cup of coffee. He looked sharp in his navy suit, every detail in place, his movements precise and deliberate. He was preparing for the biggest day of his career, the announcement of a new branch head at his firm. When he smiled and said, "Big day today," I grinned back, full of faith in him. I told him he'd get it. Of course he would. He always did. He kissed my forehead before leaving, and for a moment, I thought life was perfect. But perfection is an illusion, beautiful, fragile, and always temporary. That evening, he came home with a glow I hadn't seen in months. His smile was radiant. "I got it, Lina," he said, excitement trembling in his voice. "I'm the new branch head." I hugged him tight, laughing, almost crying. We celebrated with cheap wine and loud music in our small apartment. For one night, we were just two dreamers again, proud and foolishly in love. A few days later, over breakfast, he casually mentioned something. "Oh, by the way, I'll be getting a new secretary soon. Someone experienced from another branch." I smiled, happy for him. "That's great. You'll need all the help you can get." He chuckled and hesitated, like he was about to say something I wouldn't like. "You might actually know her," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Know her?" "Yeah," he said with a small laugh. "It's Clara Vance." My hand froze around the coffee cup. The name felt like a cold whisper from the past. Clara Vance, his ex, the one who'd broken his heart back in college. The one he once said taught him what pain truly felt like. I tried to stay calm, but the silence between us grew heavy. "Your ex?" I asked quietly. He waved a hand dismissively. "Come on, Lina. That was years ago. We're professionals now. She's qualified. Management's choice, not mine." I forced a small smile and said, "Of course." But inside, something twisted. It wasn't jealousy. Not exactly. It was a quiet, gnawing sense of unease. That afternoon, I stared at myself in the mirror longer than usual. My reflection looked the same, steady, calm, but my heart wasn't. I told myself to trust him, to believe this was just business, to stop being paranoid. But love makes you justify things that deep down you already know are wrong. A few days later, Ethan texted me a photo from work. "First day with the new team," it said. In the picture, he stood smiling in a crisp suit, and right beside him was Clara. She looked just as I remembered, confident, graceful, perfectly put together. Her hand rested lightly on his arm. A touch so small it could be ignored by anyone. Anyone except a wife who noticed everything. That night, over dinner, Ethan couldn't stop talking about how efficient she was. "Clara's great. She's organized, sharp, always 2 steps ahead. You could learn a thing or two from her." I laughed softly. "Oh, maybe I should take notes then." He didn't even hear the sadness under my words. That was the first time I felt invisible. Not in a dramatic way, just quietly unseen. Like my effort, my love, My sacrifices didn't matter anymore. Soon the late nights began. Work emergencies, he'd say. Client dinners. Reports that can't wait. At first, I believed him. I even brought him midnight coffee once, only to find his office empty. He came home later, and later, smelling faintly of perfume I didn't wear. I said nothing, because I loved him, because I believed that if I stayed calm, he'd eventually remember me. But love doesn't work like that. One night, I called to ask if he'd be home for dinner. I made your favorite pasta, I said softly. He replied distractedly, Don't wait up, Lina. Clara and I have a client dinner. Big one. That name again. Clara. It rolled off his tongue so easily now. After he hung up, I just sat there, staring at the uneaten meal on the table, the candles slowly burning down. The silence was so heavy, it felt like a third presence in the room. Sometimes I'd go for walks just to breathe. I'd watch couples laughing under streetlights, holding hands, sharing secrets. I used to be like them, hopeful, certain, happy. But now, I couldn't remember the last time Ethan looked at me like I was his piece. He used to bring me flowers for no reason. He once told me, You make the world quiet. I wondered when that stopped being true. Or maybe it never was. Maybe I was just a chapter he read too quickly. Weeks later, he invited me to a company dinner. I told myself this would be good. Maybe being part of his world again would bring us closer. That hope died the moment I saw Clara, standing beside him in her elegant black dress. When she smiled at me, it was flawless. Too flawless. Oh, Lina, Ethan talks about you all the time. You must be so proud of him. I am, I said politely, even though my stomach turned. She laughed lightly. He's always been driven. I used to push him hard in college. Guess some things never change. Her words were sweet, but her tone wasn't. And Ethan just smiled. Oblivious or pretending to be. When we got home that night, I tried to tell him how her words made me feel. He sighed. Can we not do this, Lina? She's just being nice. You read too much into everything. I just thought. He cut me off. You're jealous. Admit it. Clara's capable, confident. Maybe you feel threatened. That word hit like a slap. Jealous. He said it like my emotions were ridiculous. Like I was the problem. I turned away before he could see the tears in my eyes. That night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, feeling a distance I couldn't cross anymore. The man sleeping beside me wasn't my Ethan. Not the one I fell in love with. A few weeks passed in silence. The laughter was gone. Conversations turned into short replies. He stopped looking up from his phone when I spoke. And one afternoon, while doing laundry, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket. A dinner for two at an expensive restaurant. The same night as our anniversary. The restaurant Clara used to love. I sat on the floor holding that receipt, my hands shaking. I couldn't even cry. The pain was too deep for tears. I thought about everything I'd done for him. Quitting my job. Supporting his dreams. Standing by him through every failure. And now, he mocked my sacrifices by choosing the very woman who once broke him. That night, I stood by the window, watching the city lights blur through my tears. Somewhere out there, he was probably smiling with her. And here I was, still waiting, still hoping he'd come home. I whispered to myself, maybe tomorrow he'll remember me. But deep down, I already knew. Tomorrow would be the same. The beginning of the end had already started. Love had blinded me for too long. And soon, life would find a way to open my eyes, even if it had to break me first. People think betrayal begins with a kiss, or a lie, or a night that goes too far. But it doesn't. It begins in the smallest ways. A change in tone, a glance too long, a silence too deep. It creeps in quietly, like a shadow you don't notice, until it's already swallowing you whole. After that night, after finding the dinner receipt, I tried to convince myself that I was overthinking, that maybe it was just business. Maybe the dinner really was with a client. But the heart always knows what the mind tries to ignore. Ethan started staying out later and later. Some nights, he wouldn't come home until past midnight. Other nights, he'd claim he was too tired to talk and would go straight to bed. He used to hold me in his sleep, his arm draped protectively around me. Now he turned away, his back a cold wall of silence. One morning, as I handed him his briefcase, he smiled absently and said, "Thanks, Clara." Before realizing what he'd said, the look on his face was fleeting, a mix of surprise and guilt, and he laughed it off quickly. "Sorry, habit from work." I forced a smile, pretending it didn't sting, but my heart cracked just a little more. He left, and I stood there for a long time, staring at the door. He used to call me Love, or Lina, or sometimes just, "Hey, beautiful." But now I was just another name he mixed up. That day, I cleaned our apartment top to bottom. Not because it needed it, but because I needed to distract myself. Every corner I scrubbed was a way to silence the ache inside. But nothing worked. His absence filled every room, louder than his presence ever had. In the evenings, I'd sit by the window with a cup of tea, scrolling through photos of us. Vacations, birthdays, random selfies. Each one looked so full of love, so full of life. But now, I realized how much of that joy had come from me, trying to hold us together. Love, when one person stops trying, turns into slow suffocation. A few weeks later, Ethan suggested we host a small dinner party for some of his colleagues. He said it so casually, I almost believed things were normal again. Maybe this was his way of reconnecting, I thought. Maybe this was our chance. I spent all day cooking his favorite dishes, decorating the table, wearing the dress he once said made me look like a sunrise. When the guests arrived, laughter filled the apartment for the first time in months. I felt almost light again, until I heard the doorbell ring one last time, and Ethan rushed to open it, and there she was. Clara, elegant, confident, radiant in a way that drew every eye in the room. I froze. Ethan hadn't mentioned she was coming. She walked in like she owned the place, her perfume flooding the air, her smile practiced and perfect. "Lina, you look lovely," she said warmly, hugging me like we were old friends. Ethan insisted I join. "He said you throw the best dinners." Ethan avoided my gaze, pretending to busy himself with the drinks. I swallowed the lump in my throat and smiled politely. "Of course. You're always welcome." Throughout dinner, I watched her laugh at his jokes, lightly touch his arm, whisper things that made him smile. I tried to stay composed, to keep smiling, to not let the pain show. But it burned. Deep, steady, cruel. At one point, she turned to me and said, "You're so lucky, Lina. Ethan's always been such a dedicated man. When we worked late last night, he kept talking about how supportive you are." The words hit me like a blade dipped in honey. Late last night, I felt my heart twist, but I smiled again. The same polite smile women wear when they're breaking inside. After everyone left, the apartment was silent. I began clearing the table, the clinking of dishes, the only sound. Ethan stood by the counter, scrolling through his phone. "Why didn't you tell me Clara was coming?" I asked quietly. He didn't look up. It was last minute. She wanted to drop by. "I would have liked to know," I said, my voice trembling slightly. He sighed, finally looking at me. "Lina, it's not a big deal. She's my secretary." "You're overreacting." "Am I?" I asked softly. "Because you didn't even look at me tonight, Ethan." "Not once." His jaw tightened. "Can we not do this right now? You always twist things. Clara's part of my team. Stop making it something it's not." I stared at him, trying to find the man I used to know in his eyes. But all I saw was indifference. That night, we slept on opposite sides of the bed. and the silence between us felt louder than any argument. Days passed, each one colder than the last. He started coming home smelling faintly of her perfume. That same floral sweetness that didn't belong to me. I knew it too well. I once smelled it on her wrist when she hugged me. One afternoon, I decided to surprise him at work. I told myself I'd bring lunch, maybe rekindle something. Maybe he just needed to be reminded that I still existed. When I arrived, the receptionist smiled politely. "Oh, Mrs. Carter, Ethan just left with Miss Vance for a client meeting." I froze. "Oh, right, of course," I managed to say, forcing a smile. I stood there for a few seconds before walking back out, my heart heavy. The sun outside was bright, almost mocking. I walked aimlessly for hours, clutching the untouched lunchbox. That night, he came home late again. I didn't ask where he'd been. I just placed his dinner on the table and said softly, "You should eat before it gets cold." He didn't notice the tears I'd wiped away just moments before. Eventually, even the sadness started to fade, replaced by something colder. Acceptance, maybe, or numbness. I started doing things alone. Dinner, movies, weekends. It was easier than waiting for someone who no longer cared to show up. One evening, while scrolling through my phone, a photo caught my eye. A picture from his office's social event. Ethan and Clara, standing close, smiling. Her hand was on his shoulder. His arm brushed her waist. The caption read, "Power Duo." I stared at that photo for a long time, my chest tight. Not from shock. I'd stopped being shocked long ago, but from the slow sinking realization that the man I loved was gone. The next morning, as I poured his coffee, he said, "I'll be traveling next week. Business trip. Clara's coming too. We need to meet the investors." I said nothing, just nodded. He didn't notice how my hands trembled as I handed him the cup. After he left, I sat at the table for a long time. My reflection in the dark coffee looked like a stranger, a woman who'd given everything and received nothing in return. When he returned from that trip, he was colder than ever. He didn't touch me, didn't talk much, just a simple, "I'm tired," before retreating to the bedroom. That night, as I lay in the quiet darkness, I realized something painful. The man I loved didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. Maybe I just created him in my mind, because I needed to believe love could last. Still, I stayed. Not because I was weak, but because part of me still hoped. Hope. That cruel little flame that refuses to die, even when everything else turns to ashes. But hope can only survive so long. Because a few days later, I received a message. It wasn't meant for me. It came to our shared tablet, the one we used for streaming. A simple text that appeared on the lock screen. "Clara, I can still feel your lips from last night. Should I book the same restaurant next time?" My world stopped. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at those words until my vision blurred. The reality I'd been denying finally shattered into 1,000 sharp pieces. When Ethan came home that evening, I couldn't even look at him. I felt like every word he'd ever said to me had turned into poison. He noticed my silence, but said nothing. And maybe that was the worst part. He didn't even care enough to hide it anymore. That night, I finally broke. I locked myself in the bathroom, turned on the shower, and cried until I couldn't breathe. Every sob echoed off the tiles, drowning in the water. I wasn't just crying for his betrayal. I was crying for every version of myself I'd lost along the way. When I finally looked up, my reflection in the mirror looked hollow. My eyes were red, my face pale, but deep inside, something new stirred. Something quiet, steady, dangerous. It wasn't rage. It wasn't hate. It was clarity. I realized that the love I'd been clinging to was already dead, and maybe, somewhere deep down, a part of me was too. But that would soon change, because when the heart finally breaks beyond repair, something else begins to awaken. The days that followed blurred together, like pages smeared by tears and rain. I still cooked for him, still washed his clothes, still greeted him at the door. But inside, I was hollow. It's strange how you can live beside someone and yet feel galaxies apart. We sat at the same table, but there was no warmth. We shared the same bed, but there was no heartbeat between us. I started to notice things I'd missed before. His cologne had changed, stronger, sharper. He began dressing better, even on weekends. And once, I caught a faint lipstick stain on his collar. It wasn't my shade. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and counted the lies between us. By morning, I had decided. I needed the truth. Not the version he told me, but the one he was hiding. So, I followed him. It was a Tuesday. He left early, saying he had a team meeting. I waited a few minutes, then took a cab. My heart thudded so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. He wasn't hard to find. His car was parked outside a restaurant. The same one from that dinner receipt. I watched through the window from across the street. There they were, Ethan and Clara, sitting close, sharing laughter like they used to share dreams with me. Her hand brushed his, and he didn't pull away. In fact, he leaned closer, and when she laughed, he looked at her, really looked at her. With the same warmth he used to give me, I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. My eyes burned, my throat tightened, and every breath felt like a blade. When they left the restaurant, I followed again, keeping my distance. They walked side by side to a hotel nearby. He placed his hand gently on her back as they entered. That was the moment something inside me died. Not love. Love had already died a long time ago. What died that day was hope. I walked home in silence, my body moving, but my soul frozen. The city lights blurred as tears streamed down my face. It was raining, the kind of soft, relentless rain that soaks you quietly. And I let it. I didn't hide from it. I wanted it to wash everything away. When I got home, I didn't wait for him. I sat in our living room, staring at the photo of our wedding day. His smile in that photo looked so real. Mine did too. But now I realized. Maybe we were both pretending, even then. Hours later, he came home. Hair messy, tie loosened. He froze when he saw me awake. "Lina," he said cautiously. "Why are you up?" I looked at him, the man I'd loved, the man who'd promised me forever, and asked the question I already knew the answer to. "Did you sleep with her?" He blinked, taken aback. What are you talking about?" "Don't lie," I said quietly. My voice was calm, too calm. "I saw you. At the hotel." The color drained from his face. For a moment, silence hung heavy between us. Then he sighed and looked away. "Lina, you're being dramatic. Dramatic." That word shattered something deep inside me. "You betrayed me," I whispered. "After everything I gave up for you, after all I did to support you, to build this life." "Stop acting like you're the only one who sacrificed," he snapped. Suddenly angry. "You always throw that in my face. I didn't ask you to give up your career. You did that on your own." I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. "You said you needed me. You said we'd build our future together. I worked 2 jobs to support us while you chased your dream." He scoffed. "And now I have that dream, Lina. I'm finally someone. Maybe if you'd focused on yourself, instead of clinging to me, you'd understand what that feels like." The words hit harder than any slap could. Clinging. I repeated softly. "You mean loving you, standing by you." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "Look, Clara and it just happened, okay? We spend a lot of time together. She gets me in ways you don't anymore." I felt the room spin. My chest tightened. "She gets you," I said, each word tremblings. "She gets the man who used to come home to me, the man who used to dream with me. She gets the version I built." He didn't reply, just looked away. "Tell me," I whispered, voice cracking. "Do you love her?" He hesitated, just for a second. But that second was enough. The silence was my answer. Something broke in me then. Not like glass shattering, but like fabric tearing apart, slow and painful. I walked past him, grabbed the photo from our wedding, and pressed it against my chest. "Do you remember that day?" I asked softly. "You promised me forever." He didn't say a word. I took a deep breath, tears finally falling. "You already broke forever, Ethan." I walked to the bedroom, took my pillow, and went to sleep in the guest room. For days after that, we barely spoke. He moved like a ghost through the house, and I did the same. He didn't apologize. I didn't beg. We lived like strangers. Two souls trapped by shared walls and fading memories. Then, one morning, he came to me, his voice low. "I think we should take a break," he said. I laughed, not out of amusement, but disbelief. "A break? From what? The marriage you already abandoned." He frowned. "You're being cruel." "Cruel," I repeated. "You cheated on me, and I'm cruel," he sighed. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Lina, but maybe we've just grown apart. Maybe this is for the best. For the best." That phrase echoed in my head like poison. After he left that morning, I collapsed onto the floor and sobbed until my body couldn't take it anymore. My tears soaked the carpet, but the pain didn't ease. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was realizing how much of myself I'd lost loving him. I had forgotten what my own dreams were, who I was before him. And in that broken moment, I wished, oh how I wished, that I could go back. Back to when I still had choices. Back to before I met him. Little did I know, that wish would come true. Because the night after he officially left, something unimaginable happened. I'd gone out for a walk. My first real step outside in weeks. The sky was dark, the air cold. As I crossed the street, lost in thought, I heard a blaring horn. Headlights flashing far too close. Then, nothing. Just silence. When I opened my eyes again, everything was different. The world was brighter. The air felt strange. And when I looked at the reflection in the glass window beside me, I gasped. It was me, but younger. The same face I had years ago. Before marriage, before heartbreak. I stumbled back, trembling, my heart pounded. Not in fear, but in shock. I looked around. The familiar old campus, the familiar streets. It was the year I first met Ethan. I was reborn. And this time, I wasn't the same woman who'd loved blindly. This time, I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't sacrifice. I wouldn't break for someone unworthy. This time, I would walk away before he ever had the chance to destroy me. When I opened my eyes the next morning, I wasn't in the apartment we once shared. The faint scent of lavender filled the air, familiar, nostalgic. I turned and saw the same white curtains I used to have in my college dorm, fluttering softly against the morning light. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The memories rushed in like a flood. The laughter, the stress of exams, the dreams of a future that once seemed so bright, but none of it made sense. I sat up, my hands trembling. The phone beside me wasn't the latest model. It was my old one, the one I'd lost years ago. The screen lit up with the date. April 3rd, 2015. My heart stopped. That was 8 years ago. The year I met Ethan. I ran to the mirror and froze. The woman staring back wasn't the broken, exhausted version of me from yesterday. She was younger. Her eyes still bright, her skin untouched by years of stress and sleepless nights. I touched my face, my heartbeat racing. It wasn't a dream. I was truly reborn. And as the realization sank in, so did something else. A powerful, almost electric calm. I had been given a second chance. A chance to change everything. To undo the choices that destroyed me. To walk a different path. No. To walk away from the one that led to ruin. That morning, I got dressed and walked to class like I used to. Same campus. Same people, same world. But I wasn't the same girl anymore. Back then I was quiet, naive, always eager to please. I smiled at everyone, helped anyone, and believed love could fix anything. This time I carried silence. Calm, cold, steady silence. The kind that made people look twice. When I entered the lecture hall, I saw him, Ethan, sitting at the back, laughing with friends. The same charming smile that had once pulled me in so easily. He looked younger too, of course. His features softer. His eyes filled with the kind of ambition that used to make me proud. But now, it only made me cautious. He noticed me almost instantly. His gaze lingered for a moment, curious, maybe even intrigued. I looked away and took a seat in the front. No fluttering heartbeat this time. No shy smile. Just calm detachment. He approached me after class, just like he did the first time we met. "Hey," he said, flashing that same warm grin. "You're new here, right? I haven't seen you around before." The old me would have blushed and stumbled over her words. But this me, the one who had lived through betrayal, pain, and rebirth, just smiled politely. "I've been around," I said simply, picking up my books. "You just didn't notice." He laughed softly, a little taken aback. "I'd definitely notice someone like you." I met his gaze steadily. "You might think so now, but you won't later." And with that, I walked away. For the first time, I left him speechless. Over the next few weeks, I started living differently. Instead of revolving around others, I centered my life around me. I studied harder, took better care of myself, and focused on what I had once abandoned, my art. I'd always loved painting, but I'd given it up after marriage to support Ethan's dreams. Now I painted every night, and every stroke of color felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul. The friends I once neglected started noticing the change. "You seem different," one of them said. "More confident. What happened?" I smiled softly. "I just remembered who I am." Even my professors began to take notice. I started winning small competitions, getting invitations to showcase my work. Each success felt like a quiet victory. Not over the world, but over my past self. But no victory goes unnoticed. Ethan started seeking me out more often, little gestures at first, asking for help with assignments, offering to walk me to class, trying to sit next to me at lunch. I kept my distance, not cold, just unreachable. He wasn't used to that. Ethan was the kind of man who thrived on attention, and my lack of it fascinated him. One afternoon, as I was sketching under a tree, he sat beside me. "You're always drawing," he said. "What do you paint?" "Everything I feel," I replied. He chuckled. "That sounds deep. You must have a lot of feelings." I glanced at him, a faint smile tugging at my lips. "I used to." His expression faltered. "Used to?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Now I just have clarity." He didn't understand, of course. How could he? He hadn't lived the years that broke me. Weeks passed, and the college was buzzing with talk about the upcoming internship program. A golden opportunity for students to join a major company for training. In my past life, I had skipped that program because Ethan didn't get selected. I'd told him, "We'll do everything together," and given up my spot. That was the first sacrifice in a long chain that ended in heartbreak. But this time, I didn't hesitate. When the list came out, my name was on it. Ethan's wasn't. He congratulated me anyway, trying to hide his disappointment. "I guess they know talent when they see it," he said jokingly. I smiled politely. "I guess so." He frowned slightly. "You're not going to withdraw? I thought you wanted to focus on your art, not business." I met his eyes and said, "I want to grow, wherever that leads." It was subtle, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. The realization that he couldn't predict me anymore. I wasn't following his path. I was walking my own. At the internship orientation, I met someone new. Adrian. He was quiet, observant, nothing like Ethan. Where Ethan charmed a room with ease, Adrian listened. Where Ethan demanded attention, Adrian earned respect. He noticed my sketchbook one day during lunch and asked, "You're an artist?" I nodded. "Trying to be." He smiled. "You already are. Most people try to express themselves through words. You do it through colors. That's rare." His words weren't flirtation. They were understanding. The kind of understanding I hadn't felt in years. And for the first time, I felt something gentle stir inside me. Not love, not yet, but peace. Adrian and I became close friends quickly. He admired my independence, and I admired his quiet strength. We worked together, learned together, laughed easily, something I hadn't done in a long time. And of course, Ethan noticed. One evening after class, he stopped me. "So, you and that guy, Adrian, right? You seem pretty close." I smiled faintly. "He's a good friend." He frowned. "You don't get close with people that easily." "What's so special about him?" "Nothing," I said softly. "Except that he respects me." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan's expression flickered with something new. Frustration, maybe even jealousy, but I didn't stay to find out. I just walked away, leaving him standing there, watching me go. It felt poetic. In my past life, I had followed him everywhere. Now, he was the one following me. Weeks turned into months, and for the first time in both my lives, I felt free. Ethan's interest grew desperate. He'd show up uninvited, try to impress me, even bring coffee to my desk during internship hours. The same charm that once blinded me now felt almost childish. I saw through it all. Through the pretty words, the half-promises, the surface-level kindness. And one evening, when he finally confessed, I felt nothing but quiet finality. He stood before me, eyes filled with emotion. "Lina, I think I'm falling for you. I've never met someone like you before." I looked at him for a long moment, then smiled sadly. "You will," I said softly. "One day, she'll have everything I once gave you. Devotion, time, love. But she'll learn the same lesson I did." He looked confused. "What are you talking about?" I stepped closer and whispered, "That love without respect isn't love at all." Then I turned away. As I walked off into the evening light, I felt something lift from my shoulders, like chains finally breaking. The path ahead was still uncertain, but I didn't care, because for the first time, it was mine. That night, I stood by my window, looking at the stars. The air was cool, the city quiet. In another life, I had been lost, betrayed, and broken. But now, I had been given a chance. Not to redo love, but to rediscover myself. And as the stars shimmered above, I made a silent promise. This life will not be about him. It will be about me. And when he comes running again, because he will, he'll find nothing left of the woman who once begged for his love. Only the woman who walked away and never looked back. I remember the hospital lights flickering dimly above me, the world blurring into white, my breath slowing with every exhale. Ethan's face never appeared beside me. He didn't come. Clara did, though, her smirk faintly visible through my fading vision. Her words were the last I heard before I slipped into the darkness. "Relax, Lina. You were always too soft for him anyway." And just like that, my first life ended. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in a hospital bed. I was standing in my old apartment, smaller, cluttered, warm. The calendar on the wall read 3 years ago. My heart froze. 3 years before Ethan's betrayal. 3 years before the tears. 3 years before I signed away my dignity. I was reborn. The universe, or maybe fate itself, had handed me a second chance. And this time I promised myself I wouldn't waste it on a man who mocked my love. I sat down, staring at the familiar phone on the table. Ethan's number was saved at the top. In my past life, I would have called him, reminded him to eat breakfast, and sent a text saying, "I love you." But now, my fingers didn't move. My chest didn't ache. I felt strangely calm. That calmness was power. Instead of texting Ethan, I grabbed my notebook, the one where I had written my dreams years ago. Start my own studio. One line read, "Publish my designs." Another said, "Learn to paint again." I had buried all that under bills, meals, and emotional labor. But this time, I would bury none of myself for love. Days turned into weeks, and I began to rebuild silently. I joined a design firm. Not the one Ethan introduced me to, but one where I could grow on my own. The pay was small, but every penny was mine. Every project I completed was a step away from the woman who once waited by the door for someone who would never come home. Meanwhile, Ethan began calling again. "Lina, why are you ignoring me?" he asked one morning when I finally picked up. His voice still had that same smooth confidence I once adored. I simply said, "I'm busy, Ethan." He paused, probably shocked I didn't rush to explain myself or apologize like before. "Busy? With what?" "Living." And I hung up. I could almost hear his confusion echoing through the silence that followed. A few weeks later, at a charity gala, hosted by one of our mutual business connections, I saw him again. Ethan, the man who would one day mock my sacrifice. The man I once thought I couldn't live without. But standing beside him this time, laughing in her perfect red dress, was Clara again. My stomach didn't twist though. Not anymore. I just smiled faintly, because I knew what was coming. I wasn't the naive Lina anymore. The woman who would hold her breath to make room for others. This time, I would let fate unfold while I built my own name. A few months into my reborn life, my hard work began paying off. One of my design sketches went viral online after a fashion blogger featured it, calling it refreshingly raw and emotional. Invitations from small brands started coming in. I stayed up late, sometimes till dawn, sketching, designing, dreaming, free for the first time in years. Then one day, I received an invitation that made me pause. Invitation. Carter & Associates Business Expo. Carter & Associates, the very company Ethan worked for. In my past life, I had been there too, silently supporting him as he presented his projects. But now I would attend as a guest designer, representing a rising design startup that wanted to collaborate with new talent, the same place, the same faces, but a completely different me. When I arrived, the air buzzed with chatter. People greeted each other with smiles that didn't always reach their eyes. I caught sight of Ethan across the room, his sharp black suit, his confident walk. Clara stood next to him, of course, holding a tablet, whispering something into his ear. He turned, as if sensing my gaze, and our eyes met for the first time since that phone call. His expression froze. He looked at me as though seeing someone entirely new, and in truth, he was. I was no longer the woman who waited at home or cried in silence. I was Lina Carter, the designer people were now whispering about. My name carried weight, my posture carried confidence, and my heart no longer needed him. After the event, I walked out under the night sky, feeling the cool breeze brush against my face. The city lights shimmered like the future, bright, distant, but completely mine. That night, I wrote in my journal again. He taught me what love shouldn't feel like. She taught me what betrayal looks like. But Rebirth taught me what I truly deserve. I closed the notebook and smiled. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't about proving anything to Ethan or Clara. It was about me finally choosing myself. And yet, deep down, I sensed fate wasn't done with us. Because sometimes, the past doesn't let go so easily. Sometimes, it finds a way back, especially when it realizes what it's lost. The first time Ethan called again, I didn't even notice. My phone had been buzzing on the desk while I was finalizing sketches for a new campaign. By the time I checked, there were 5 missed calls and 1 message. Lina, can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. The words almost made me laugh. For years, I had been the one trying to understand him, forgiving every late night, every cold stare, every dismissive tone. Now that I'd chosen peace, he called it a misunderstanding. I didn't reply. Days passed, then weeks. My life began to move faster than I could process. I was signing my first major contract as a lead designer for a luxury brand. My team, small but passionate, cheered as we presented our final collection. For the first time, I felt proud, not because someone validated me, but because I finally validated myself. But fate has a strange sense of irony. The event for our new line was hosted at the very same hotel where Ethan's company often held their corporate gatherings. I didn't think much of it until I saw him again. He was standing by the glass doors, looking more tired than I remembered. His once perfect posture seemed uncertain, and when his eyes met mine, that old confidence flickered into something softer. Regret, maybe. He approached slowly, like a man walking toward a memory. Lina, he said, his voice low. You look incredible. I gave a polite nod. Thank you. You look well. He smiled faintly. I've been trying to reach you. I've been busy. His brows furrowed. Busy with all this? He gestured to the lights, the cameras, the designs bearing my name. You really made it happen. I met his gaze steadily. Yes, I did. There was silence, the kind that holds all the words that will never be said. Then he asked softly, Do you ever think about us? My lips curved into a calm, distant smile, only when I remember who I used to be. He flinched slightly. That was the moment I realized something. Ethan wasn't used to seeing me stand tall. He wasn't used to not being needed. The rest of the night, I could feel his gaze following me as I moved from table to table, speaking to sponsors, photographers, and stylists. Every time I smiled, his eyes darkened. Every time someone praised my work, his expression grew tighter. By the end of the evening, when I stepped outside for some air, he followed. Lina, he said again, this time more urgent. Can we start over? I know I made mistakes. I was stupid back then. I didn't appreciate. I turned toward him sharply. Ethan, you didn't just make mistakes. You made choices. Choices that told me exactly where I stood. He fell silent. His hand, which had half reached toward me, dropped to his side. I gave everything I had to you. I continued quietly. My dreams, my nights, my self-worth. And you mocked that. You mocked me. He took a step closer, his voice almost pleading. I was wrong, Lina. Clara. She's not what I thought. She left months ago. I ended things. I see it all clearly now. You were the one who truly cared. I shook my head. Ethan, you don't get to see clearly after destroying everything in the dark. He exhaled shakily, the proud man now reduced to someone I barely recognized. I miss you. I can't stop thinking about you. You look happy now, and you should have thought of that before you let me cry alone in that hospital bed. The words slipped out before I could stop them. His eyes widened. Hospital bed, he whispered. I froze. In this life, that moment hadn't happened. But the memory of my death, my past life, flashed too vividly. I forced a small smile. Just a metaphor, I said quickly, brushing past him. Goodbye, Ethan. As I walked away, I heard his voice crack behind me. Lina, please, just dinner. One dinner. But I didn't stop. I had made peace with that version of myself who would have turned back, hoping he meant it. That Lina was gone. Later that night, as I sat by my window, sketching quietly, I realized how powerful peace can feel when it's truly yours. The wind outside carried faint city sounds, but inside me, there was stillness. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need validation. I had already won by becoming someone who no longer needed to beg for love. But I knew Ethan wouldn't stop there. Men like him rarely let go of what once belonged to them, especially when they finally realized the gold they discarded wasn't dust. It was treasure. And soon enough, fate would prove me right. Because the next morning, an email landed in my inbox from Ethan Carter. Subject: proposal. I stared at it for a long time. So it begins, I thought. When I first saw Ethan's name in my inbox, I almost deleted it without opening. But curiosity, dangerous familiar curiosity, stopped me. The subject line was simple: proposal. I clicked it open. Lina, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but please read this before deleting. I have a new project at Carter & Associates, a collaboration with several independent design houses. Your name came up in our internal shortlist. I recommended you personally. Let's meet to discuss terms. I believe this could benefit both of us. Ethan, I read it twice, then a third time. A project collaboration. My company was indeed looking for corporate partnerships. From a purely business standpoint, it was a good opportunity. But from a personal one, it felt like a trap dressed in professional language. Still, I couldn't ignore the irony. The same man who once mocked my sacrifice now wanted my partnership. I didn't reply right away. I spent the next 2 days thinking it over, weighing logic against emotion. The old me would have let her heart decide, but the new me, the reborn me, was guided by reason. Finally, I replied with one line: send the details. I'll consider. The meeting was scheduled a week later. Neutral ground. His company's glass-walled boardroom overlooking the skyline. When I arrived, the receptionist greeted me politely, but her eyes widened slightly as she recognized my name. The whispers began even before I stepped into the meeting room. I could hear them. That's her. The designer Ethan Carter used to date. It didn't bother me. Not anymore. Ethan stood by the long table, a little older, a little less polished. His tie was slightly crooked. He smiled faintly when he saw me, but it didn't reach his eyes. Lina, he said, pulling out a chair. Thanks for coming. I'm here for business. I replied evenly, taking a seat. He nodded. Of course. Strictly professional. But as he began presenting the proposal, it became obvious he hadn't changed at all. Every slide had my name mentioned alongside his company. Every clause tied my firm's intellectual property to his. It was polished manipulation, dressed in charm and corporate language. When he finished, he looked at me expectantly. So, what do you think? I smiled faintly. It's impressive, but it's not a partnership. It's ownership. Yours. His brows furrowed. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, I interrupted quietly. You want to use my success to rebuild yours. You always did. The silence that followed was deafening. He exhaled sharply. Lina, that's unfair. I'm trying to make amends. No, Ethan. You're trying to rewrite history. His voice softened, almost pleading. I made mistakes, yes, but you're different now. Stronger, confident. Maybe this time we could actually be equals. I met his eyes, calm and steady. You can't be equals with someone you once tried to break. He froze. And for the first time, I saw guilt flicker across his expression. Not performative guilt, but the real kind that eats from the inside. I stood, gathering my documents. Thank you for the offer, Ethan, but I built this from ashes you left behind. I won't hand it back. As I turned to leave, his voice followed, low but desperate. You still mean everything to me, Lina. You always did. I didn't stop walking. Then you should have treated me like it before I stopped needing to hear it. When the elevator doors closed, my reflection stared back at me. Calm, composed, untouchable. But inside, my heart trembled. Not for him, but for the version of me that once would have stayed. That night, I worked late at my studio, lost in sketches. My assistant, Nora, glanced up. You okay, boss? You've been quiet since the meeting. He smiled. I'm fine, just thinking about how strange life is. How so? People only see your worth when it no longer serves them. Nora tilted her head. You think he'll stop trying? I looked out the window, where the city glowed with ambition and mistakes. No, I said softly. He won't. Not yet, and I was right. Over the next few weeks, Ethan began to appear everywhere. At events, at panels, at every place my brand was invited. He would smile politely from a distance, pretending it was coincidence. But his eyes told another story. Once, after a conference, he approached again. Lina, please, just coffee, 1 cup. No business talk, I sighed. You're persistent. I just want to talk, he said. Not about work, about us, I hesitated. Maybe closure was something I still needed, even if I didn't want it, so I agreed. The cafe was quiet, filled with soft music and the faint aroma of roasted beans. I sat across from him, the same way I had countless times before. But everything felt different. He looked at me with something raw in his eyes. I keep thinking about the past, how I let you down, how I thought success would fill the space. Love was supposed to. I said nothing. He leaned forward. I know I don't deserve it, but if there's even a chance, I'd like to try again. For a moment, I saw him, the man I once loved, stripped of pride, stripped of control. But then I remembered Clara, the laughter, the mockery, the way I begged for scraps of affection. I smiled sadly. Ethan, you taught me what kind of love I'll never accept again. His jaw tensed. So there's someone else? Not yet, I said softly. But when he comes, I'll know. Because he won't make me feel small just to love me. Ethan's shoulders slumped. He looked like a man who'd finally realized his greatest mistake too late. As I left the cafe, the air outside felt lighter, like something inside me had finally unclenched. I didn't hate him anymore, but I didn't love him either. I was simply free. But fate had one more twist, waiting. One that would test just how strong I'd become. Because a few days later, as I scrolled through a business headline, my breath caught. Carter and Associates scandal. Internal fraud investigation underway. And Ethan's name was at the center of it. When I saw Ethan's name in the headlines, I froze. Carter and Associates embroiled in corporate fraud investigation. Key executives under scrutiny, including senior manager Ethan Carter. It didn't feel real. Ethan had always been ambitious. Yes, but careless. Dishonest. That wasn't the man I once knew. Or maybe I had never truly known him at all. I scrolled through the article, my pulse steady but heavy. The allegations were serious. Misallocation of client funds, falsified invoices, insider dealings. If proven true, his career, reputation, and freedom were all at risk. My phone began vibrating with messages before I even processed it. Old colleagues, former friends, even reporters trying to get a quote. Lina, you worked with him, right? Did you know anything? Are the rumors true? I ignored them all. Later that evening, I sat alone in my office. The city lights glowing outside, like a world that kept spinning, no matter whose life was falling apart. I told myself it wasn't my problem. He had made his choices. He had mocked mine. But then came the message. Ethan, Lina, please, I need to talk to you. Just once. For a long time, I stared at the screen, debating whether to delete it. Yet something inside me stirred. Not love, not sympathy, but something quieter. Closure, maybe. So, I agreed. We met at a small park near my studio. It was late. The sky hung low, heavy with clouds. Ethan was already there, sitting on a bench, his face pale, his eyes sunken. The confident man I once loved looked like a ghost. He stood as I approached. Thank you for coming. I crossed my arms. You said you needed to talk. He exhaled shakily. It's all falling apart, Lina. The company, my team, everything. I didn't do what they're accusing me of. But someone framed me, and I can't prove it. I watched him closely. Why come to me? Because, he said quietly, you're the only person who ever believed in me, and I know you're the only one who might still see the truth. I let out a faint, bitter laugh. You're asking for help from the woman you broke. He winced. I deserve that. But I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just help me clear my name. Please, Lina. There was a pause, thick with history. I could feel the old part of me, the caretaker, the believer, struggling to resurface. But another part, stronger now, whispered caution. Who did this? I asked finally. He hesitated. Clara. My heart stilled. She handled several of the transactions. He continued, his voice rough. She left months ago, but now the evidence points to me. The files, the signatures, everything. She made it look like I was complicit. For a moment, I saw flashes of that woman's smirk, her cold eyes, the way she had watched me crumble in my past life. Some part of me wasn't even surprised. You trusted her, I said softly. His eyes closed. I did. I trusted the wrong person. Again. I stood silently, weighing my choice. Ethan didn't deserve my help. But the woman Clara had become was dangerous, manipulative, skilled at twisting the truth. I'll look into it, I said at last. His eyes widened. You will? I'll help uncover the truth, I clarified. Not for you, Ethan. For justice. And for the part of me that refuses to watch another woman destroy lives. Over the next week, I quietly dug into public records, contract data, and archived project details. My network in the design industry proved useful. One of my contacts, a tech consultant, helped cross-check file timestamps, and there it was, hidden in the metadata. Several forged documents, all signed under Ethan's digital credentials, but uploaded from Clara's device months after she had resigned. The evidence was clear. She had planned it meticulously. I called Ethan to meet me at my studio. When he arrived, he looked worse than before, exhausted, haunted. I slid a folder across the table. This is what you're looking for. It's proof she set you up. He flipped through the pages, disbelief slowly shifting to relief. You actually did this? Yes, I said quietly, because even though I don't owe you anything, I couldn't stand by and watch someone else destroy what's left of you. He looked up, eyes glistening. Lina, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, I replied. Just make this the last time you ever let your pride blind you to people's worth. He nodded, swallowing hard. I won't forget this. As he left, I felt no triumph, only peace. I had finally faced the ghosts of both my past and my rebirth. Days later, the headlines shifted. Carter and Associates clears Ethan Carter of wrongdoing. Former employee under investigation for evidence tampering. Clara was gone, disappeared without a trace. That night, I stood by my apartment window again, watching the city breathe. I felt lighter, not because I had helped Ethan, but because I had helped myself close the last chapter of that story. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that fate wasn't finished. Because the next morning, a single bouquet appeared at my doorstep. White lilies. My favorite. Though I never told him that. There was a card. For everything I did wrong, you still saved me. I placed the flowers on the counter, staring at them for a moment before walking away. I didn't throw them out, but I didn't keep them close. Either, some things are meant to be forgiven, not repeated. And for the first time, I truly understood the difference. Weeks passed after the scandal, and life began to settle into a rhythm I had never known before. The city lights didn't feel oppressive anymore. They felt like endless possibilities. My designs were receiving recognition. Invitations to collaborate poured in. And my studio was slowly becoming a name people trusted. It was during one of these collaborations that I met Adrian. He was unlike anyone I had ever known, quiet, observant, and genuinely interested in understanding my vision, rather than claiming it as his own. Unlike Ethan, he never tried to charm or manipulate. He listened. He questioned. He encouraged. Our first project together was a small gallery installation. I sketched the concepts, and he worked on refining the presentation, ensuring my ideas were seen in the best light. By the end of the week, we had created something remarkable. But more than that, I realized I had found someone who appreciated the real me. Not the version shaped by someone else's expectations. Not the broken Lina from my past, but the woman I had rebuilt myself into. Adrian and I started spending time outside of work. Coffee turns into lunch, lunch into walks in the park, walks into late-night conversations about dreams and fears. For the first time in years, I felt a quiet warmth in my chest, a sense of peace I had thought impossible. Meanwhile, Ethan watched from a distance. I noticed him occasionally at events, lingering where I was, pretending to focus on work, but always letting his gaze find me. There was no malice now, just longing, regret, and a silent acknowledgement that I was no longer his to control. One evening, Adrian and I were walking back from a gallery opening. The city shimmered around us, and I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. "Lina," he said softly, "I know life hasn't been easy for you, but I want you to know that I see you. All of you. The Lina who fights, the Lina who creates, the Lina who loves, fiercely but carefully." I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. "Thank you, Adrian. That means more than you know," he smiled, taking my hand gently in his. "I'm not going anywhere." And just like that, I understood. Love didn't have to hurt. Love didn't have to be a battlefield. With Adrian, it was safe. It was nurturing. It was real. Ethan didn't approach me after that. I noticed his presence less and less at events. Then came the moment that truly drove the point home. He sent a message, a single line. "I see you happy. I hope he treats you better than I ever did." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. For the first time, I was living entirely for myself. Months later, Adrian and I officially became a couple. It was quiet, without grand declarations, but filled with understanding, respect, and gentle joy. My studio thrived. My designs were recognized. And for the first time in my life, I felt the balance between love, career, and self-worth. And somewhere, across the city, Ethan watched it all. I didn't know if he still loved me, or if it had transformed into something else. Regret, longing, perhaps even admiration. But it no longer mattered, because I had chosen myself first. Standing on the balcony of my studio one evening, looking at the skyline ablaze with city lights, I realized something. Rebirth isn't just about undoing the past. It's about creating a future that honors you. I had walked away from betrayal, from heartbreak, from a man who didn't see my worth. I had survived. I had rebuilt, and I had found love. Not the kind that demands sacrifice, but the kind that celebrates strength. For the first time, I felt truly free, and I knew without a doubt that nothing, no past love, no betrayal, no mistake could ever take that away from me. The morning sun streamed through my studio windows, casting a golden glow on the sketches scattered across my desk. For the first time in years, I woke up feeling fully present, not haunted by the past, not anxious about the future, simply alive in the moment. Adrian was there, as usual, sipping coffee while reviewing some design notes. He looked up and smiled, a quiet warmth in his eyes that made the years of heartache fade into memory. "Morning," he said. "Big day?" I nodded. "Yes, the showcase, our biggest yet." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're going to be amazing. But remember, no matter what happens, you're already the Lina I've always admired." I smiled. feeling the truth of his words settled deep in my chest. This was real. This was love untainted by manipulation, unburdened by fear. I had found someone who not only valued my work, but also cherished the woman I had become. Later that day, as the gallery filled with industry leaders, media, and fans, I felt a calm confidence wash over me. The designs we had poured our hearts into were displayed beautifully, and the energy in the room was electric. But my mind remained grounded, focused on the joy of creation, rather than external validation. I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure near the entrance. Ethan. His eyes widened when he saw me. For a brief moment, I wondered if he had come to plead, to beg, to reclaim what he had once lost. But I didn't look away. I didn't flinch. He hesitated, then quietly turned and left. No words, no confrontation, just the silent acknowledgement that the Lina he once controlled no longer existed. Exhaled softly, that chapter was finally closed. After the showcase, Adrian and I walked through the quiet streets, the city lights reflecting in puddles from a brief afternoon rain. The night was calm, peaceful, and entirely ours. "Do you ever think about how far you've come?" Adrian asked. I laughed softly. "Every day. I was broken once, yes. But that version of me isn't here anymore. I've rebuilt myself, stronger, wiser, and finally free." He nodded. "And you'll never let anyone make you feel small again?" "No," I said firmly. "Not ever." We walked hand in hand, feeling the unspoken promise of a shared future. No manipulation, no betrayal, no shadows of the past. Only growth, respect, and love. That night, as I journaled before bed, I reflected on everything that had brought me here. The heartbreak of Ethan's betrayal, the sting of being mocked and undervalued, the pain of sacrifice that went unnoticed, the courage it took to rebuild from ashes, and finally, the rebirth, the moment I chose myself over anyone else's expectations, the moment I embraced my worth, and the moment I allowed myself to love again. I closed the journal, a peaceful smile on my lips. Life hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it, because I had learned that strength isn't just surviving, it's rising, choosing yourself, and finding love that nurtures, rather than diminishes. And as I drifted to sleep, the city lights glowing outside my window, I knew that this was only the beginning, a life fully mine, a love truly mutual, and a heart unbreakable. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment love, so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, spread love.